Hi, my name is Darian Mapa Gunaratna, and my York ID is 220 964 409. And my Stocktrack username is ADMSO. And in this presentation, I'll briefly go over a few of the trades I made in my Stocktrack portfolio and explain the reasoning behind them, along with how some of them performed. As I'm showing you here, this is my portfolio and some of the positions I've held throughout the semester. Overall, I tried to build a mix of positions that gave me exposure to both stable long-term investments and more tactical opportunities rather than relying on just one type of trade. One of the first stocks I chose was Coca-Cola with the ticker symbol KO. I picked Coca-Cola because I wanted a company in my portfolio that was relatively stable and lower risk. Since it operates in the consumer staples sector, demand for its products tend to remain fairly strong even during economic conditions. I also like the fact that Coca-Cola has a very strong global brand and a long history of paying dividends, which made it attractive as a long-term investment. So for me, this is more of a defensive and income-oriented stock rather than something I expected to move aggressively in the short run. Another investment I made was XIU, as you can see over here, which is the iShares S&P TSX 60 Index ETF. I chose XIU because it gave me a broad exposure to some of the largest companies in Canada without having to rely on just one stock. Since it includes major Canadian companies across sectors like banking, energy, and telecommunications, I saw it as a practical way to diversify my portfolio and gain exposure to the overall Canadian market. Its performance was slightly down, but that's fairly normal because ETFs like XIU are tied more to broader market conditions than to one specific company. So for me, XIU represented a more diversified and lower risk part of my portfolio. A more tactical trade I made was a short sale on BCE, as you can see over here, with a ticker symbol BCE.TO. I chose BCE because I believed there were several short-term factors that could put pressure on the stock price. The telecom sector has been facing more competition and regulatory pressure, and companies like BCE also have to deal with high costs related to network upgrades and 5G infrastructure. On top of that, BCE is often viewed as a dividend or bond-like stock. So in a higher interest rate environment, it can become less attractive to investors. That made it a reasonable short selling idea, and it did generate a small profit, which supported my logic behind the trade. I also held TD Bank, as you can see right over here, which was another important position in my portfolio. And the reason why I chose it is because it's one of Canada's largest and most established banks, and it also has strong dividend history, which made it appealing as a more stable investment. I saw it as a good way to gain exposure to the Canadian financial sector while still holding something relatively reliable and income oriented. In terms of performance, TD actually performed positively in my portfolio. And at the time of the snapshot, it was showing a gain of about $144 or roughly 1.5%. So that was a good example of a position where my thesis was supported by the stock's performance. Overall, this stock track experience helped me better understand that different investments can serve different purposes in a portfolio. For example, Coca-Cola represented stability, XIU represented diversification, BCE was more of a short-term tactical trade, and TD represented income and financial sector exposure with a positive return. So overall, the project helped me think more critically about risk, return, and how to build a more balanced portfolio rather than just buying stocks randomly. Thank you.